I spent a year closing high ticket deals for the biggest sales training company in the world. And in that time, I closed 150 deals at a 34% closing ratio. And I've collected just a little under 1 million in the cash collected in English, which actually is my third language. But before that year, my closing ratio on American prospects was sitting below 10%. Even though I had 15 years in sales, VP title, teams that I have built, and I was getting beaten by people with a fraction of my experience because I had no idea how to sell in this market. And I thought I did. I didn't. This video is about what actually changed and had nothing to do either with the scripts, nothing to do with objection handling or my confidence. So if you close deals in English and it's not your first language, or even if it is, and your numbers still aren't where they should be, I think you're about to find this useful. Because if I can figure this out, selling in a language I didn't grow up speaking, you can absolutely use this wherever you are. The majority of closers who are not stuck because they need a better objection handling scripts. They're actually stuck because every prospect they talk to has an alarm going off in their head from the first sentence. You know, the alarm, this is a salesperson and they want something from me alarm. And once the alarm is on, nothing you say lands the way it should. Their guards is up, they're like half listening, they're like waiting to get off the call, just sitting there for being polite, right? And every objection you get at the end of the call is just the expressing of that alarm. Most people try to fix this at the end of the call with more reframes, putting more pressure on them, like putting the urgency. Obviously it doesn't work because you're treating the symptom, not an actual cause and the problem. The alarm was set at the very beginning of the call and you never turned it off, right? And I did it for years. When I finally understood that thing was actually wrong, it was almost embarrassing how long it had taken me to actually freaking see that. But let me take you back to where it's actually started. Everything I had built, every result, every team, every system was in the European market. The moment I started going after American clients, my numbers just fell apart. Calls were dying for the reason I couldn't even diagnose. I had no experience. I had no track record, and I could not figure out what was actually freaking wrong. What I eventually figured out, my skills weren't built actually for that market. Not because of the accent, not because of the language, but because of the entire way I've learned how to sell over the past 15 years. And those skills was built totally for a different buyer. European B2B buyers respond to the logic, processes, and time. American high-ticket deals buys on emotion. The whole game is helping them to feel the weight of the problem before you ever present a solution. I have never learned that, and no amount of the confidence was going to cover that for me. So I stopped. I put down my VP title, walked away from running teams, and I went to get the job as a closer inside 7th Level. That's Jeremy Miner's team. That's the biggest B2C sales training company in the world, working commissions only, meaning eating what I kill. I walked in there and they put me through like a meat machine. When I got to 7th Level, I had the VP title on my resume, years of results, and I walked onto that floor thinking I have a foundation to build from, and I didn't. I had 15 years of a wrong approach, just executed confidently. And I had to find out that the hard way. The first weeks were just brutal. I would be on the calls and feel the momentum. I was actually losing the prospects. The energy would shift from here to here, and they just would go quiet. And my instinct every time told me that I do what I had always done. Just push a little bit harder, get more logical, bring in the reframe, create the urgency. And every single time I made, things just got worse. And on top of all of this, I'm not a native English speaker. And on some of those calls, I couldn't even feel it. The moment the prospect heard something unfamiliar in my voice, and their guard went just here. Every trainer in this industry would tell you, push through it, be more confident, handle the resistance, close harder. That was completely the wrong answer. The problem wasn't the accent. The problem was that I was in a conversation designed to produce a freaking resistance. And when you're already at slight disadvantage because you sound different from what the prospects expect, the last thing you can afford is a conversation built to produce a freaking resistance. So I started watching those top closers on a team, not just their scripts, but the whole shape of their conversation. And what was different? They were having a completely different kind of call. The prospects was relaxed, doing most of the talking, most like catching up with someone they already trusted. And by the time any commitment came up, the prospect had already sold themselves. These guys weren't better at objection handling. The alarms was never going off in the prospect heads in the first place. Every prospect you meet with has a commission breath radar. From the first sentence, they're scanning for it. Is this person here to help me or they're here to close me? And the moment they smell it, they're gone. Well, not physically, right? They're still on the call, but mentally, they've checked out. Everything you said after that gets filtered through, this person just want to sell me something. You can technically execute every step of your process and still lose a deal because the decision not to trust you was made in the first 30 seconds. I had commission, Brad. I didn't know I had it, but it was baked in the way I've been trained in the past. The pressure, the urgency, the push at the end. And it was worse in the US markets because American high ticket buyers are more confident to smell it. They've been on more sales calls than the whole world, right? Their radars is more sensitive. And top closers on the team had learned how to make sure the tumbler was down, they never fired. They've called it disarming, removing the salesperson identity from the conversation, from the first sentence, so that the prospect's brain could actually hear what was being said. There are a few things that do it. The way you open, the questions you ask and why you ask them, and the moments where you say the opposite of what the prospect actually expects, what they call pattern interrupts. When you say, between you and I'm not sure if you should work with us yet. Instead of this defending yourself, the prospect brains stop looking for the sales pitch because it can't find one. So once the prospect is actually open, once they're actually talking and not defending themselves, then you can ask the question that does the rest of the work. If nothing changes, what does the next year look like for you? And then you stop talking completely. Because when someone genuinely looks at the cost of staying where they are in a conversation where their cards is already down, something happens that no reframe script can actually produce. They feel it in themselves. They say it out loud and they start talking themselves toward a change. And you don't close them. You know what you do? You actually help them close themselves. That's what I spent that year learning. Not how to push better, how to stop being the thing the prospect was actually defending against. So let me give you an example. I'm on a call with a woman named Gloria. That's just one of the calls, right? We're in the middle of going through financing options and she's literally on her phone unblocking her credit bureaus, and mid-task she actually stops and she says, while I'm doing this, where are you actually from? Where's that accent coming from? And I tell her like to guess, and she says something like from Eastern Europe, like Romania or something. I said, it's Latvia. She asks if English is my second language. I say more like a third because I speak Russian better than English and Latvian is my first one. And she's, wow, and goes back to her credit check. That's the moment that should have derailed the conversation if the conversation was the wrong kind. But by that point, she'd already told me what was actually at stake for her. She had already a look at what the next year would look like if nothing changed. And she had already felt it and she'd already decided. So when my accent actually came up, it was just the fact about me. It wasn't the reason to reconsider something because she already decided, right? And at the end, she said, well, you good, Rivas. I told her that I'm not that good. And she said, well, I woke up this morning not even thinking about this, and now I'm ready to invest 10,000. And then what I said was, well, would you want to learn how to sell like this? Or maybe, crazy idea, this guy with this half Russian accent. And she just laughed and made the transaction. So that is not a story about the accent not mattering. The accent is real. The language gap is real. That's a story about the conversation where the alarm actually never went off. And because of that, nothing else mattered. I went from closing 10% to 34 within that year, outclosing people who grew up in this market and that was their first language and in their home turf because the structure was actually right. Here's what I know. After a year, the closers who are stuck aren't stuck because they're not good enough. They're stuck because nobody ever showed them what's actually wrong. And I didn't figure this out until I had to rebuild everything from the freaking scratch. Most people never get that moment. What I do now is I work directly with closers, people who are good at their craft, but whose close ratio doesn't reflect how hard they're actually working, and help them to restructure their conversations around this approach with call reviews, feedbacks on deals, and direct accountability from me. So if your close ratio is not where it should be, ask yourself the same question I ask on every call. If nothing changes how you are running your conversations, what does the next 12 months look like for you? And if the answer is uncomfortable, click the link below and book a call. Talk soon.